Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, unlocking the power of Thinkorswim, the award-winning trading platforms loaded with features that let you dive deeper into the market. Visualize your trades in a new light on Thinkorswim desktop with robust charting and analysis tools, all while you uncover new opportunities with up-to-the-minute market news and insights. Thinkorswim is available on desktop, web, and mobile to meet you where you are. It's built by the trading obsessed to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350-plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
People in the midst of a mental health crisis are at a much higher risk of going missing. In the late summer of 1989, a 64-year-old man from North Carolina became part of that troubling reality. That evening, police had been called to his home multiple times in response to what seemed like episodes of paranoia. But later that night, he stepped outside into the dark and was never seen again. It was easy for some to assume that he'd suffered a mental break and tragically wandered off, possibly succumbing to the elements. But his son couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up, so he launched his own investigation. What happens when someone is confirmed to be experiencing paranoia, but other clues suggest they may have met with danger outside of that as well? Whether this was a case of foul play or a heartbreaking accident, his family has now spent 36 years searching for the truth. I'm your host, Megan, and each week on A Simpler Time True Crime, I cover older unsolved cases and challenge the idea that a simpler time means a safer time. This week, I'm bringing to you the unsolved disappearance of Ellis Faison Sr. I wanted to first thank listener Christina S. for requesting this case. She sent this to me to look into, and I'm so glad I did because it explores the important intersection of mental health, substance use, and going missing. In the true crime space, sometimes consumers get caught up in looking for what is considered to be the quote-unquote perfect victim. Someone who is straight-laced, innocent, and leads a low-risk lifestyle. Having this bias and these thoughts don't make you a bad person, but it is important to examine why we gravitate towards this line of thinking, especially when, as humans, we are messy and complex and a million puzzle pieces of everything that has ever happened to us. And even if a person is struggling with things like mental health or substance abuse or engaging in a high-risk lifestyle, they still matter just as much and deserve to be looked for and found. There aren't a lot of good studies out of the United States, but one UK study suggested that up to 8 out of 10 people who go missing suffer from some form of mental illness. Very often, these people do resurface. They may live somewhat of a transient lifestyle and struggle to maintain employment and pay for housing. And there isn't always a ton of mystery in their disappearance in and of itself, other than the disappearance and where they currently are. There are very often not signs of foul play, but it should also be noted that people with mental illness, particularly those who are unhoused, are at a significantly higher risk for harm by another human than the rest of the general population. In the case I'm covering today, it's a bit of a combination of both. Ellis was acting in a way that suggested he was having mental health struggles, but not everything in his case adds up to that being a standalone factor. So let's get into it, and I'm sure you'll form your own opinion as we go. Ellis Faison Sr. was born July 12, 1925. Not too much is publicly known about his life. Ellis served in the Navy and was a veteran of World War II. He was thin and wiry with an unassuming presence, standing at just 5 feet 3 inches tall and 115 pounds. He was known for being relatively soft-spoken and calm-natured. Ellis married his wife Dorothy and had 2 sons and settled in the town of Kenansville, North Carolina. Located in eastern North Carolina, Kenansville's center is Liberty Hall, the stately home of Revolutionary War General James Keenan, now preserved as a museum. And surrounding it are quiet streets, old churches, and homes that have stood for over a century. The population in 1989 was 864, and it still hovers around that statistic today. Ellis spent his post-military career serving as a handyman for the county school district, working for 35 years before he retired. By the summer of 1989, Ellis was 64 years old and facing his share of struggles. His physical health was deteriorating, and this wasn't made any better by his addiction to alcohol. Their sons were grown, with their oldest son Willie serving in the Army overseas and their younger son Ellis Jr. living in a town nearby. Ellis's wife Dorothy wanted to get him some support and have him get into some sort of detox facility or rehab. Like many people addicted to substances, Ellis did not align with her thinking, and his addiction was so bad that he was hiding alcohol in and around his house. Because of his worsening health conditions, he was also taking prescription medications to manage them. His family was not sure if his subsequent behavior was because of him mixing prescription medications with alcohol, or if he was beginning to have signs of early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, or possibly even a combination of everything. Nevertheless, in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Ellis began acting strangely. He seemed to be hallucinating and was talking to dead relatives. This came to a head on the evening of August 9th, 1989. The day had been rough all day for Ellis. He believed at times that he was being chased by phantoms and continued conversation with dead relatives, at one point even asking his wife Dorothy to pour them some water and pointed to some empty seats. By late afternoon, Ellis became fixated and obsessed with the idea that a group of white teenagers were messing with his car, an old, beat-up Bonneville that he kept near the house. His brother-in-law was over visiting, and suddenly Ellis said, "They're in there right now." So his brother-in-law went to check in the vehicle, and he didn't see anything. This seemed to temporarily ease Ellis's mind, but not for long. Eventually, his wife Dorothy grew tired and had to lay down. She worked as a housekeeper for a local business, and she was exhausted. After Dorothy was in their bedroom, Ellis crept out into the carport where he had hidden a bottle of Travelers Club whiskey. He poured himself a cup into a coffee mug when suddenly he saw them again, the white teens in his vehicle. This was around 9 p.m., and at this time, Ellis placed his first 911 call. Kenansville had a police force of 3, a chief named Glenn Braswell, and 2 officers. One of the officers responded to the call. He walked through the mist and rain that had begun coming down and approached Ellis Faison Sr. This officer was a man named Rick Whaley. According to Officer Whaley, Ellis was extremely agitated and was worried that the teens were going to attack him. The officer walked over to the vehicle and noticed no signs of a disturbance, no footprints besides those of Ellis, and the car was locked. The officer let Ellis know this and told him not to worry. He'd drive by and continue to keep an eye on the property that night. And with that, the officer drove off, but about a half an hour later, Ellis phoned 911 again, and he was very upset that the teens had returned. Once again, Officer Whaley returned and searched the vehicle, finding it in the exact same condition. According to Officer Whaley, he searched the property as well, but he could find no signs of a disturbance or anybody else around. Officer Whaley decided to take a different approach this time. He told Ellis that he would park his police car behind some trees and keep an eye out to see if the teens returned. This lasted for just over 10 minutes when Ellis came running up to the officer's vehicle, his yellow shirt and his cap soaked from the rain, saying that once again they were in his car. So Officer Whaley, to his credit, ran quickly over to the car to find it once again unoccupied and locked. At a loss for what to do, the officer told Ellis to go inside for the night and lock the door to stay safe. He watched as Ellis went inside and turned the porch light off. With that, the officer got back into his cruiser and into the night he went.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Now, part of what I like to discuss on this podcast is how this situation might have been handled differently if the same thing happened today. There are a lot of factors at play here, and on the surface, if this is exactly how it played out, I'll be honest, this officer didn't do a terrible job in my opinion. I'm sure he recognized that something was off about Ellis and how he was acting, and he didn't just tell the man, hey, you're being delusional, which is more than I could say for some officers, even today. He even tried to somewhat acquiesce to Ellis's reality and offer him comfort and reassurance in the way that he knew how. Ideally, he would have tried to connect Ellis with some mental health services, maybe even knocking to wake up Ellis's wife or asking Ellis what relatives he could reach out to so that he could have someone come stay with him. But this is a small town 36 years ago. There likely wasn't even a nearby psychiatric facility, and we don't know that Ellis would have agreed to do it. More is known about psychiatric supports, and first responders receive way more training now than they did years ago. But we also still have a long way to go, and the response you receive is still largely based on the training of that police force, who shows up that day, and what resources any given area has. That's just the reality. So what we know next, at least on the surface and in initial reporting, is that Ellis walks out of his front door sometime later that night and is never seen again. At around midnight, Dorothy Faison realized that Ellis was not in the house. When she didn't see him in the immediate yard, she called and woke up her son Ellis Jr. and told him that she couldn't find his father. He came right over and the two drove around looking for him but were unable to locate him. They drove around most of the overnight, and as daylight broke, they drove down to the police station to report Ellis missing. Shortly thereafter, as Kenansville devoted their limited resources to searching for Ellis Sr., his oldest son Willie was contacted in Germany where he was stationed in the army, and he was only told that his father was ill. He hopped on a plane home and learned of the full picture. News spread quickly in the small town. Some theorized that Ellis may have been the victim of a hate crime. In 1989, this area was known to have Ku Klux Klan activity. Just a few houses down, an older black man had recently moved in with a white woman, which had caused, at best, small-town gossip, and at worst, some hate. Some suspected that maybe when Ellis was out that night, he was mistaken for this other black man, or possibly was just targeted by the KKK or someone hateful just out because he was alone out as a black man that night. Others in the town suspected that Ellis had run away because of his wife's desire for him to go to rehab. Police discredited these theories and shared that they believed Ellis had suffered a mental health break, as evidenced by how he was acting when they encountered him the evening prior, and that he had unfortunately wandered off. Despite the searches for him, law enforcement couldn't locate him. In fact, they only found 3 total signs of Ellis. Number 1, his cap was found in the neighbor's yard. Number 2, his coffee mug full of whiskey was still in the carport. And number 3, strangest of all, his shoes were neatly placed near the steps. So as he ran away, he would have been running away barefoot. His family found this extraordinarily odd because Ellis always had his shoes on. He was deathly afraid of snakes, so much so that he wore shoes in his own home in case of the off chance that he encountered a snake inside. Ellis's son Willie couldn't help but feel that not enough was done to help look for his dad. While I wasn't there at the time, I couldn't find anything in the source material that indicated a large-scale search, the kind you'd find if a young child went missing. And those types of disparities in response still exist today. But he also felt that everything was just not adding up, so Willie began conducting his own investigation. And when doing so, he stumbled into a troubling fact. You see, Ellis's cousin Dorothy, who I'm going to call Cousin Dorothy so as not to confuse her with Ellis's wife, lived across the street. In talking with Cousin Dorothy, Willie found out that she was stirred awake by commotion at around 11:45 p.m., so she pulled back her curtain and looked out the window. She reportedly saw her cousin Ellis in her front yard, looking panicked. According to reporting in the News and Observer, Cousin Dorothy shared that she thought he might be yelling for help. She then watched him move quickly across her lawn and into the next block. He then stopped suddenly, as if confronted by something. He backed up a few steps, turned sharply, and disappeared behind a tall fence. Losing sight of him, she shared that she opened up her blinds in another room to try to view from another angle. And it was then that she saw a second person. A stranger who she didn't recognize walking casually down the same street. According to the paper, he wandered into a neighbor's yard and stood for a moment on the porch. With the help of the outside lights, she could see clearly the man's long, dark hair and dark overalls, and she was fearful that he escaped from a local jail. Getting a bad feeling about it, she called 911 to report a prowler. Officer Whaley and another sheriff's deputy responded to the call and searched around, but found no sign of the man. According to police records, Cousin Dorothy's call came in just before midnight, which aligns with her story. Something that struck me as odd was that Cousin Dorothy shared this whole story to the officers, but it doesn't sound like they checked in on the Faison household. What's also odd is that Ellis Sr.'s wife, Dorothy, had begun her search for Ellis around this time, so it's surprising that they didn't all just run into one another. It didn't sit well with Willie Faison that the cops never disclosed this call or mentioned the man with the ponytail. Cousin Dorothy gave a detailed description of the man to the officers, including the fact that he had this long ponytail, was white, was stocky, and that he had a limp. The only other witnesses that night were a couple of people who drove through the area and confirmed they saw police in the neighborhood between 9:45 p.m. and 12 midnight. They said as they were driving by the Faison residence, an officer was parked across the street and flashed their lights as they passed, as if to announce their presence. This is interesting because Officer Whaley stated that he left at 9:45 and doesn't remember coming back to the Faison property that night. Law enforcement brushed this discrepancy aside, stating that while good-intentioned, people aren't always very good at remembering times, and they likely just mixed up the time the officer had camped out looking for the teens to return. I just want to take a brief moment to thank you for your continued support of the podcast. Thanks to you all as loyal listeners, I've been able to expand this podcast and hit so many goals I've had for the year. I can't wait to keep them coming, and I'll be sharing some exciting news with you in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. And now, back to the show. Willie Faison struggled with the investigation, and he confronted the officers, saying he knew of someone who fit the description of the man with the slicked back hair, even down to the limp. According to the News and Observer, Willie identified this man as a Kenansville youth who liked to hang out with the two patrol officers. Mind you, these patrol officers, including Officer Whaley, were barely into adulthood themselves. Whaley was around 21 years old. Willie Faison shared his concerns with the Kenansville Police Chief Glenn Braswell, who was not interested in Willie's theories or his armchair detective work. But Willie wouldn't be deterred. He began to accuse the Kenansville cops of a cover-up, and the relationship grew rocky, and that's probably the understatement of the year. Willie Faison said that the police had altered their timeline of events, which they denied. Willie reported that he was denied access to the 911 call transcripts, whereas the county reported that they were accidentally erased. Willie told the paper, quote, "I think if I had shuffled my feet and said, 'Yes, sir, boss,' they would have let me find my father's body. But as it was, I wasn't even able to get reports or anything in writing," end quote. After voicing these accusations, the Kenansville Police Department pulled in the State Bureau of Investigation out of Greenville to do an independent investigation into Ellis's case and their handling of it. This began in October of 1989. 2 SBI agents were assigned and they interviewed about 60 people. Their findings were pretty much the same as what was originally reported. Ellis's behavior leading up to the events and on that day, with the hallucinations and paranoia, his subsequent 911 calls and Officer Whaley's handling of them, Cousin Dorothy's 911 call and the report of the prowler, and Dorothy, the wife, and Ellis Jr.'s search for Ellis Sr. and then reporting him missing. From there, it's a mystery. Willie Faison stated in a 1995 article that he believes that vigilantes heard the news reports over the police scanner and decided to come and look for the prowler themselves, maybe mistaking Ellis for the prowler, and he was so scared that his heart gave out or they hurt him and covered it up. Officer Whaley admitted that this isn't outside of the realm of possibility and that everyone in town did have a police scanner they followed. The SBI rejected this theory, but also didn't have one of their own. Detective Jim Wilson of the SBI said, quote, "I can't explain to you or anyone what became of him. The only explanation is that this stuff just happens sometimes. Mr. Faison just went missing," end quote. Willie Faison was angered. He wrote to U.S. Senator Jesse Helms, quote, "My father gave 35 years of faithful service to the county of Duplin before retiring. He is a veteran of World War II. I served 2 tours in Vietnam and was wounded twice. Is this the type of treatment patriotic, hardworking citizens can expect?" End quote. And he didn't stop there. He wrote to everyone: the American Civil Liberties Union, the FBI, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, just anyone he could try to press for answers. While he was on extended leave from the military, he stayed in Kenansville and would occasionally encounter local law enforcement, typically always engaging in some sort of verbal exchange with them. But this boiled over one day just before Christmas in '89. The story goes that Willie was at a convenience store. He came up a few pennies short for a food purchase. He got into a verbal altercation with the store clerk, who then called the police. When the police showed up, Willie said that the officers brushed forcibly against him. The police report indicates that actually Willie then swung at them. A continued altercation happened where several food stands were knocked over and wrecked, and in the end, Willie Faison was arrested for assaulting a police officer. In the end, he pretty much got a slap on the wrist, he got a fine, and things kind of mellowed out over that. He realized he needed to take it down a notch. He resumed his work in the military, and his visits to his hometown were fewer and farther between. He continued his advocacy work and letter writing campaigns, but he realized that he might have to come to terms with the fact that he won't find out what happened to his father. And as someone super close with his father, this was just devastating to him. Ellis Jr., the more quiet and contemplative of the 2 brothers, stayed local and kept an eye on his mother Dorothy. Ellis Sr.'s disappearance took its toll on her, and she died just a few years later in 1994. And since then, there have been no new leads. If Ellis were still alive today, he would have just celebrated his 100th birthday, something statistically unlikely given the health challenges he was already facing in his 60s. But his family was haunted with the fact that they couldn't give him a proper burial or know what fate he encountered that night. I mean, there are so many unanswered questions. Who was this prowler that Cousin Dorothy saw following Ellis that night? Is it possible that his paranoias are what caused him to flee the house that night, but that then he did encounter someone else who harmed him after he left? And then even, were his paranoias rooted in some reality? I had the thought that maybe some local teens were messing with him leading up to this. Maybe not that night, as both his brother-in-law and the responding officer reported being with him when he claimed the teens were in his car, and they could confirm with certainty that they weren't. But it's not unheard of for bored teens to go pick on the mentally ill neighbor and mess with him. Was this a racially motivated crime? Is there any chance that this was a case of mistaken identity, like some have suspected? Why was Ellis uncharacteristically barefoot when he was so afraid of snakes? What does this clue tell us? Did he really just run off in the midst of experiencing a different reality and somehow succumb to the elements? What is difficult about this is he's never been found, and given how he was in pretty poor health, it's hard to imagine he could have gotten too far. I tried to look up swamps, ponds, and waterways in the area, but I'm unsure of his exact last location, and without that, it's hard to tell. But if he did drown, his body has never surfaced. It's hard to imagine that someone can just wander off in a delusional state, disappear, and their body not be found, but it actually happens more often than you think. For example, in April of 2004, 28-year-old Jeremy Alex vanished in Northport, Maine under mysterious and troubling circumstances. Witnesses reported that Jeremy seemed paranoid and disoriented the day he disappeared, claiming quote-unquote bad guys were after him before fleeing into the woods. His van was later found abandoned with his personal belongings inside, and a few weeks later, his ID and cash were discovered washed ashore nearby. Despite extensive searches and years of speculation, no confirmed trace of Jeremy has ever been found, and his disappearance still remains unsolved. In July of 2006, 33-year-old Cole Dwayne Jackson disappeared under similar circumstances near Timpson, Texas. On the 13th, he left home to visit a friend, and later he drove off with urgency, reportedly telling a local landowner that he needed to flee because, quote, bad people were after him. His silver 2003 Dodge pickup was found abandoned in Shelby County 2 days later, with his asthma inhalers inside, suggesting he left without them and was in distress. A subsequent search by family uncovered his shoes, and inside one of his shoes was his wedding ring, deep in the woods. Due to his medical condition, recent mental agitation, and odd behavior, authorities flagged his case as an endangered missing person investigation, but no trace of him has ever surfaced. Some states have implemented new measures to help identify at-risk missing persons who may have some additional vulnerabilities, including mental health concerns. Purple alerts, similar to amber alerts, but for at-risk missing persons with, say, a medical, developmental, or mental health concern, are becoming increasingly popular. They started in Florida in 2021 and are now in Mississippi, Maryland, Connecticut, and West Virginia. It should be noted that these purple alerts often exclude Alzheimer's and dementia patients from the alert requirements, and I believe that is because of the frequency and concern of overuse. It's this balance between wanting to do these alerts but having enough criteria in place so that people don't become desensitized to them. It's a tricky balance that I feel like needs work on the Amber Alert side as well, but I do recognize the challenges. With all the time that has passed, this is one of those cases I have a hard time seeing solved given its unique set of circumstances, unless skeletal remains pop up. But I still found Ellis's case important to talk about, because no matter his struggles, he deserved a softer ending to his life than the fear he was experiencing that night. Something all of us need to have empathy for and work to build a society that is better for people who are struggling. If you do have any information on the disappearance of Ellis Faison Sr., please contact the Kenansville Police Department at 910-296-1911. This has been another episode of A Simpler Time True Crime. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Word of mouth helps me grow, and I can't thank you all enough for all you've done to share the podcast and these cold cases. As you can see by this episode, I do take listener requests, so please send them to simplertimecrimepod@gmail.com. I also partner with families to share their loved ones' cases. So if you know somebody who is looking to get visibility to their loved one's case and the case is 20 years or older, please have them reach out. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another case next Monday.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.